What's up, guys? Welcome to the first class in your beginner's yoga series. I am so grateful that you've decided to join me on this journey. It's going to be a fun one. If you have not viewed the video that I sent to you prior to this one, push pause and go watch it. It just gives you a little bit more information about what yoga really is, what yoga is not, and it'll give you a little bit more confidence as you step into this first class. So before we move into any postures, let's talk about some props that you may or may not have. If you don't have them, it's all good, no worries. But here are three kind of typical props that we use in yoga. So the first one is a strap. And your strap is just an extension of your arms. So if you're trying to reach, typically it's your feet and you can't quite reach them yet, unless you have super short legs like me. You can use a strap as an extension of your arms. It's also useful in binding, or we're trying to reach hands, and if you can't quite reach, you can use a strap for that. If you don't have one of these like fancy schmancy yoga straps, a towel will work, a tie will work, anything that has two ends will typically work. The second one is a block. Your block just brings the earth up. I like to sit on it. Again, maybe because I'm just a little shorter, it makes me feel taller. But if you have tight hip flexors or hamstrings, sometimes sitting in an easy seat is not always so comfortable. So lifting the hips up will allow it to be a little bit more accessible. If we're in standing postures and we're trying to reach down to the ground, it allows you to rest your hand on it. And it's also very useful in restorative postures. My favorite posture of all time is supported fish, and it requires blocks, and I love it, and it's amazing. So it just takes some of your typical postures and makes them a little more restorative. We also have a blanket. So a blanket is nice to, if you have knee issues, sometimes we do things on our knees. You can double up the blanket and take your knees to that. Just gives you a little bit more support. You can also sit on it. Again, if you have tight hamstrings, sometimes it's not accessible to even to sit tall with your legs out straight, and a block sometimes is a little too much. So doubling up your blanket will just give you a little extra lift. It's also nice in Shavasana, our final relaxation pose, if you want to drape it over your body. But again, we're going to get into all of those postures, and I will make sure that I let you know what to do and which posture or which prop to use. All right, so let's talk about the breath. Without the breath, there is no yoga. And this is probably the biggest thing that made the biggest difference in my life off of the mat. I have struggled with anxiety and bipolar disorder. So when those manic phases or just major anxiety would come into my life, I would automatically go to the breath. And so I would use that tool off of my mat to just help me kind of stay grounded, to calm me. And so it's super important. I can't stress this enough in my practices and in my classes. So be very intentional with practicing the breath. We're going to start with the Dirga breath, or 3-part breathing. And the 3 parts are the belly, the ribs, and the chest. So we typically breathe with about 1/3 of our lung capacity on a regular basis. So the air doesn't even get up into our chest, where we carry stress, where tendons get tight from typing or sitting at a desk all day or driving. So it's just good to create a nice full deep breath so we get that air all the way up into our chest. So we're going to start with the Dirga breath. So just come to a nice, comfortable, easy seat. If you've got something to kind of sit up on, go ahead and grab that. Or just coming to a comfortable seat. If you can't cross the legs, maybe just having one in front of the other will be accessible. So whatever is most comfortable, just come into that. And then go ahead and close your eyes. And you want to sit nice and tall in the spine. It's not a forced sit, but we are sitting tall, creating lots of space for that breath to move around. You want to soften the features of your face, unclench your jaw. Releasing any tension that you might be holding into the shoulders. So slide the shoulder blades down your back. And taking your attention to your hands, whether they are palms up on your thighs, ready to receive, or whether the palms are down to feel a little bit more grounded. Have the hands soft. And just take a moment here to tune into your natural breath. Notice if it's deep or shallow, if there's some type of rhythm to it. And this time at the beginning of our practice is so important because we're being intentional with not just showing up physically, but showing up mentally as well. Just making a conscious effort to be a little bit more present. So moving into the Dear God breath, take your attention to your belly. And notice how on the inhale, the belly goes out. And on the exhale, I want you to take your belly button back to your spine. And if the belly doesn't go out on the inhale, because we're so conditioned and trained to keeping that thing in and up, I want you to allow the belly to fall out as you breathe in, and then actively taking it back as you exhale. And then deepening the breath just a little bit here, bringing that air up from your belly into your ribs. Notice how the ribs expand out to the sides as you inhale. And on the exhale, the ribs come back together, belly button back to your spine. And then deepening your breath even more, bringing that air up from the belly, in through your ribs, all the way up into your chest. Maybe your collarbone lifts. And on the exhale, the collarbone falls, ribs come back together, belly button back to your spine. Inhale, belly goes out, ribs expand, chest lifts. Exhale, chest falls, ribs come back together, belly button back to your spine. So just taking a few deep breaths here, feeling the lungs completely, exhaling fully. You're just taking a moment to notice how that feels to take a nice deep breath. Making sure the exhale is just as controlled, just as long, if not a little longer than your inhale. Now let's take one more inhale. And exhale. And then gently open your eyes. Right? I mean, if we did just that for the next hour, it'd be a great practice. All right, so you can tell as we're controlling the breath, are breathing in fully and exhaling fully, how we are controlling the breath. right? It's no longer our natural breath. We are taking some control over it. So our breathing practice in yoga, we call that pranayama. Prana meaning our life force, yama meaning restraint. So you can see how we are controlling the breath. So I want you to maintain that deep, full breath, right? Bringing that air all the way up into the chest, while we tune into our second pranayama for the day, which is called Ujjayi breath, right? Say it with me, Ujjayi. Ujjayi breath. It's also known as the ocean sounding breath because we are creating this kind of sound of the ocean. It's also called, I've heard it referred to as the Darth Vader breath. And just a few things about this breath. It's amazing, by the way. I'm kind of obsessed with it. This is the breath that you're going to use throughout your practice the whole time. You're going to maintain this breath of sound. Second thing is that if you've ever slept with a fan on, not just for the cool breeze, but for the sound, right? It's just naturally calming to the central nervous system. And also reminds the people that you're practicing with, maybe not today. It also reminds your neighbor to breathe, right? So if you're practicing with other people, I am always reminded, like, it's not all just about me. I breathe to bring community. I breathe for the person next to me who may not be able to catch their breath, right? So there was a season in my life where I got on my mat and I literally just couldn't. It was all I could do to get a breath in. And I would just listen to the sound of the people around me, and it's like they were holding space for me. So it's very important for me, not just in my own practice, to breathe with sound, but to hold space for the people that are in class with me who might not can catch their breath that practice. So they also did a study about this breath called How Yoga Works. The Boston School of Medicine did it, and this is so crazy. I love it. They noticed that when we breathed with the Ujjayi breath, this breath that I'm about to teach you, and we omed audibly, we were increasing vagal tone. So you have a vagus nerve that starts at the base of your skull and moves throughout your body. Google it. It's super important. It has its hand in your digestive system, your respiratory system, and your central nervous system. So when we breathe with that sound, we are stimulating that nerve, allowing all of those functions to work more effectively and more efficiently. So we don't breathe with sound just to make sound, right? We are actually calming ourselves and getting all those functions to work optimally, right? So be very intentional with trying to create the sound. You might not get it today, and that's all good, but practice makes progress. So make sure that you are intentional with trying to create it. So all right, coming back to that nice, comfortable, easy seat, sitting tall in the spine. We're going to start to fill the lungs completely, exhaling fully, but I want you to take your attention to the back of your throat. You're going to constrict there, right? Constrict the muscles there. And as if you were trying to fog up a mirror, as you breathe in and as you breathe out, that's the sound that you're going to make with your mouth closed. All right, so let me just give you the sound of it first. It's a So it's almost like this little whisper of a breath. Sometimes if you open your mouth and you exhale, you can hear that sound more, you can just hear it more. All right, so it'll sound like this. So again, nice and even, nice and controlled, but really trying to create that sound, all right? So with your eyes opened or with them closed, we're going to start to take full breaths. Take your attention to the back of your throat, constrict there, and then try to pick up that Ujjayi breath. Take a few more rounds. Now we're going to start to bring some movement into it. So getting your kind of first taste of a vinyasa. On the inhale, I want you to sweep your arms up. Allow the fingertips to lightly touch, and then exhale, let the arms float down. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, arms down. Inhale the arms up. This time, open the mouth. Inhale the arms up. Open mouth, exhale. Inhale the arms up. Open the mouth, exhale. Halfway down, close the mouth. One more inhale. And close the mouth, exhale. And then keeping the eyes closed, taking your hands back to your thighs, just take a few deep breaths. And then gently open your eyes. All right, so if you can't hear anything right now, no judgments, okay? Again, this takes a lot of time to really grasp the concept. Just remember a few things. It does not come from the nose, right? It's not a, right? Like you're angry, right? It comes from the back of the throat, and it's not forced. I don't want you to try to force this sound out of your body. I just want you to continue to practice with some ease, and eventually allow the sound to just kind of naturally come. You can't right, like force it out of you. So don't do that just to get the sound. Know that it'll come with practice. All right, we've got a whole class to work on it. So all right, let's move into some postures. If you are on a block, go ahead and remove it. And we're going to start with Dandasana. So taking your feet out in front. And I'm going to be kind of moving from side to front just to give you different angles. Feel free to stay exactly where you are. All right, so taking the feet straight out in front and grounding down into your sitting bones. It's always important to create a nice firm foundation where you're really connected with the earth. So if you got to move some junk from your trunk, go ahead and do that and get settled in. And then keeping the legs active. So we're flexing through the feet, toes reach up towards the ceiling. You're pressing through the heels. Take your hands down by your sides. Again, the pads of your hands may touch, they may not. It's all good either way. Right, but pressing into the hands, lengthening up through the spine. Take your belly button back. And just in this posture, with everything nice and active, you quickly learn that we're never just hanging out in any of the postures. We are active. And even though it looks pretty simple, it can be pretty challenging. So just take a few deep breaths here. Tuning into how your breath moves your body. So noticing how on the inhale, we lengthen, we create space. On the exhale, you might find some ease. You might hug in just a little bit more. All right, so this is Dandasana, or staff pose. This next pose we're going to move into is bound angle, or Baddha Konasana. So we bring the bottoms of the feet together, again, staying grounded into the sitting bones. And you want to reach the heels back towards the pelvis. If the knees are really high up, it's all good. You can either take the feet out a little bit, or again, this is where some blocks will come in handy. You can prop the knees up, and it just gives you a little bit more support. Right? So Baddha Konasana, heels reach back towards the pelvis, or you might be modifying a little bit. And then on the inhale, we sit up nice and tall. Right? We're creating that space. And then as you exhale, hinge at the hips, reach forward, and we're going to start to fold. So you've got two options once you get to where you're going in the fold, whether you're basically vertical, right? Or you're all the way down to the mat. I want you to either A, keep a nice flat back, right? With the back flat, you're gonna feel that more in the outer hips. Or you can start to allow the spine to curl down and allow your head and your shoulders to be a little heavy. So it's going to take you out of the hips just a little bit. Not you're still going to feel it, but it adds like a little restorative aspect to the posture. So you can stay here with your hands down. You can always keep a hold of your feet. Wherever you are, staying tuned in to the breath. If when you start to round through the spine, if you start to feel any pulling or any pain going on in the low back, I want you to just lift the chest back up some. Right? So pain is your body's way of saying, stop, hold on, chill out for just a minute. So pain is not okay. Being uncomfortable is, right? One of the things yoga teaches us is to be okay when things aren't comfortable, right? So when things are just a little uncomfortable, you just tap into that breath and you breathe into that. And take one more full breath in. Hold here as you exhale. And then inhale, start to lift the chest back up. You're going to keep your right foot in and straighten the left leg out towards the top of your mat. So here we are in seated tree. You want to keep the hips nice and squared. And this left foot, the one that's extended out, is straight forward. It's not out to the side. It is straight forward. Toes reach up towards the ceiling. So I'm going to turn this way. Right? So the foot just comes into wherever it meets on the inner thigh. Right? So with the left foot flexed, inhale, sweep the arms up, take a full breath in. And then as you exhale, we hinge at the hips. We don't round through the spine. So I want you to think, reach the sternum towards your toes, not necessarily getting your head to your knees. So I'm going to turn this way again to show you that fold. And in any fold, whether we are seated or whether we're standing, we hinge at the hips. So we inhale the arms up. And we exhale, hinge, reach forward, and then fold. So again, great place for a strap. If the hamstrings are a little tight, you can take the strap around the arch of your foot, and it allows you to not round through the spine like this, but use that resistance with the hands to pull the chest forward. If the hamstrings are so tight that even sitting up like this doesn't allow you to keep a nice flat back, then grab your blanket, grab a towel, grab whatever it is you need to just create a little lift, right? And then take the strap or whatever you got, right? And keep reaching the heart forward. Right, and the goal is to feel a stretch in the back of your left leg, your hamstring. So if you feel that, then you're probably doing it right. All right, so we're gonna hold here, take nice deep breaths. Inhaling, lengthening. Exhale, sinking a little deeper. All right, that might not be such a visible movement, right? It might just be more energetically. It might just be you becoming aware of how the breath is moving in the body. And then inhale, lift the chest. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the blanket, but if you've got, if you're using the blanket, keep it there. All right, we're just gonna switch sides. Bring the left foot in, right leg extends out towards the top of your mat. All right, again, if this knee is really high up, you can always prop it up with the block or let it just hang out if that's okay. And then inhale, sweep your arms up. Exhale, hinging at the hips, reach forward and then fold. Forget about my super flexible folks. If you are super flexible already, you can take a block to the bottom of your foot and use that as an extension of your foot to get a little deeper stretch. And then inhale, start to lift the chest. We're gonna make our way out to hands and knees or a tabletop position. So you wanna stack your shoulders over your wrist and your hips over your knees. And whatever you do with your feet, doesn't matter, I don't care. You can flatten the tops of your feet. I feel like when we move into some other variations of this pose, that makes it a little more challenging. Or you can always keep the toes tucked, whatever feels best. All right, so shoulders over wrist, hips over knees. We're gonna take a few rounds of cat-cow. This is also one of my favorite transitions. It just feels really nice warming up the spine. But on the inhale, we drop the belly down. Take your gaze and tailbone up. And then as you exhale, we curl through the spine, press into your hands, take your chin to your chest. So you're really puffing up in between the shoulder blades like a Halloween cat. And then inhale, drop the belly down, gaze and tailbone come up. And exhale. So starting to connect your breath with your movements. And maybe you just close your eyes and you just move through this transition organically at your own breath. And then if there's any movements within this transition that feel good, and if you're new to yoga, you're like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what transitions I need to take, but sometimes pressing the ribs and the hips out to the sides feels nice. I'm about to lose my mic. All right, and then you can make these belly rolls. I've heard someone refer to this as sexy cow, right? So you just close your eyes and you take any movements you feel your body needs. It just feels really good though. Let's take one more full breath in, drop the belly, gaze up. And one more exhale, curl through the spine, press into the hands, take your chin to your chest. And then making your way back out to a neutral spine, we're gonna come into child's pose. And this pose is available to you throughout your entire practice. If you ever need to take it, you just drop the knees and come here. So we're gonna take the knees out, mat width apart, big toes together. You're gonna start to sink your hips back towards your heels. Reach the fingertips out towards the top of your mat and allow your forehead to rest on the mat. If your forehead doesn't meet the mat, again, a block is also nice. It gives you some support. If you've got some shoulder issues, if taking the arms out is not okay, you can always put a soft bend in the elbows. You can always take your arms down. Or if you want to make it super restorative, reach your hands in between your legs, grabbing hold of your feet, and then take your one cheek to the mat. So wherever you are in any of those variations, just take a few deep breaths. If this is ever too much on your knees, again, your blanket, you can roll it up and take it behind your knees. And again, that'll just give you a little bit more support as you reach out. Let's take a few more deep breaths. And then taking your gaze forward, come back up through hands and knees. So we're going to bring the knees back underneath our hips and come out onto your belly and onto your forearms. So sphinx pose. Your shoulders are stacked right over your elbows. Your fingers are spread wide. The lower body is just kind of relaxed, right? So maybe just rock the hips side to side. And then gently pressing the tops of your feet into the mat, or just becoming aware, right, that your feet are back there. And then we're not dumping into the shoulders like this, right? We are pressing into the forearms, reaching the sternum forward as if I had a string tied right here to the center of your chest, and I am pulling you across the floor. You want to energetically use your hands to almost pull back as you reach the chest forward. Lengthening up through the spine. We're not taking the gaze up or anything. Gaze is straight ahead. And tuning into the sensations in the body. Maybe with every inhale, you imagine just a little bit more space being created in between each vertebrae. And take one more full breath in. As you exhale, release down. Maybe stack your hands, take your forehead or just a cheek to your hands. All right, so that's our first back bend. It's what I like to call a little baby back bend. But a good one nonetheless. All right, take your hands under your shoulders. We're gonna press back up through hands and knees. We're gonna make our way to standing at the top of our mats. All right, so our first standing pose is called Tadasana, or mountain pose. It is the foundational posture of all other standing poses. So I feel like a lot of the alignment cues that I'm gonna give you in Tadasana, or mountain, you can find pretty much in all standing poses. So first, coming to the top of your mat, and you can either have your feet hip distance apart, or you can have the big toes together, just a slight space in between the heels, like maybe an inch or half an inch. So I feel like with the heels slightly separated, it allows the thighs to stay active and spin in, which eventually takes some compression off of the low back, right? And with whatever percent of people having low back issues in the world today, right? Taking some of that pressure off is always a good thing. All right, so whether the big toes are together, a little space in between the heels, or whether your feet are hip distance apart, I want your feet facing forward. And it's amazing to me, just as I teach, just how people have no awareness of how they normally stand or their body. And so you'll see people like this, or, like this, right? So I want you to look down at your feet, make sure they're both facing forward. And then with the gaze down at your feet, I want you to pick all 10 toes up, right? So we're getting nice and grounded into the feet. When you pick the toes up, you can feel how you're grounding into the big toe mound, the pinky toe mound, and the backs of your heels, right? So with the toes lifted, spread them out wide, and then try to place them down one at a time. Right? Yogi toes, right? So now we've gotten into our feet, starting at the base, working our way up. Engage the quads, right? Legs are really strong. And they're hugging in. We've got these muscles going down the inside of our thighs called our adductors. I will refer to them a lot in this series. But they're active. They're hugging in. And they're not a clenched. None of this is a clenching, right, where we're hanging on for dear life. It's just an activation where we actively hug in and lift up, right? So from the legs hugging in, I want you to take your attention to your pelvis. There's a tendency to just kind of hang out in the low back. I want you to think about lengthening the tailbone down towards your mat as you pull up through the pit of your belly. So the pit of your belly is not your belly button. It's about 3 inches below, in between your pubic bone and your belly button, right? So I want you to pull up there, and lengthen the tailbone down towards the mat, taking any added curvature, right, out of the low back. From there, we inhale, lengthen up through the spine, create space. Shoulders slide down away from the ears. You can have the palms forward if you'd like. Right? Slightly taking the chin back. We're not trying to create any extra chins, but you're going to slightly take it back so that the ear is over your shoulder, and we're not jutting the head forward, because there's a tendency for us to, and maybe it's from looking at the screen all day, right? So just slightly take the chin back. And then as if you had a string tied to the crown of your head, lengthening you up, I want you to think about creating length there as well. Again, so we're not just hanging out. This is a very active pose, and we're just standing, right? You're like, how is standing so difficult? Tune into your breath. Filling the lungs completely, exhaling fully. Notice how you feel here, standing firm, balanced on 2 feet, your own 2 feet. Standing tall, strong. Right? Sometimes if you don't feel super confident, or if you don't feel strong and tall, right? Just come into this pose. It's amazing how when these postures will start to transform us on the inside, right? So just maybe with your eyes closed or open, nice deep breaths. Feel this pose. Feel the strength. And then gently open your eyes, moving into chair pose. Okay, so this is the beginning of Sun Salutation B, which we'll get into maybe session 3 or 4, not real sure yet. But it's the beginning of that flow. And we're with the feet, either, again, hip distance apart or together. Bend the knees, sweep your arms up. Sit back into the heels, so we're not reaching forward. The heels are heavy, toes are light. We're not all in the heels, but about 80%, 20% in the balls of your feet. Again, belly button back to your spine, and you don't want to reach the chest forward. So if the chest is more parallel to the floor, I want you to come out of the knees a little bit, reach the chest forward, and work on squeezing the elbows straight, getting your biceps by your ears. And that requires some flexibility in the shoulders. If you're not there today, it's all good. Maybe you just reach the arms out here, but knowing ultimately we're working on getting our biceps by our ears. Get your gaze set. This is a challenging pose. Tune into your breath. Give me one more full breath. Reach to the fingertips. Inhale. Hold here as you exhale. And then release to standing, hands to heart center. Right, so heart center, palms together, thumbs to sternum or in front of the sternum. That's what the heart center is. Right, so chair pose is pretty challenging, right? And we're just going to transition from Tadasana or mountain pose into chair. So we're starting with the arms down. Maybe your palms are facing forward. On an inhale, sit back into the heels, sweep the arms up. And then exhale, hands to heart center. Release the hands back down. Inhale, sit back into the heels, arms up, Utkatasana, chair pose. And then exhale back to standing, hands to heart center. So we're starting to connect the breath with the movement. Inhale, sweep the arms up, sit back into the hips. Exhale, hands to heart center. All right, again, in chair pose, we're not just hanging out, right? We're not like loosey-goosey in the arms and the hands are just kind of limp. Like you decided to show up, you bought the series, like show up, girlfriend, show up, or boyfriend, whatever, whoever's watching this right now. So lots of energy coming through the fingertips. Take one more full breath in. Exhale, hands to heart center. Come back to standing. Take a few deep breaths. And then gently open the eyes. We're going to move into a forward fold. So we're going to come from mountain pose or extended mountain. Okay, so mountain is with the arms down. On the inhale, we're going to sweep the arms up, extended mountain. So we just take the fingertips up towards the sky. And then as you exhale, we're going to swan dive, forward fold. So remember, on the folds, we hinge at the hips, right? So you can take the arms out and fold with a nice flat back. And then if you need to bend the knees, bend the knees. So here we are in a forward fold. Feet are together or they're hip distance apart. And if there's a big gap between your ribs and your thighs, right, I want you to soften the knees a little bit. Otherwise, you're just kind of hanging out in your low back like this. And over time, that's not going to be good. So bend the knees, get strong in the legs, and then allow your body to fold over. Right, and then from this, right, connection, then we start to maybe straighten the legs. All right, so we come out of this pose back up into extended mountain, just like we came into it. So we're going to reverse swan dive up, right? So we lead with a flat back. So inhale, take your gaze up. Nice, strong core. Sweep the arms up. And exhale, hands to heart center. Nice. All right, so we're going to do that again, working on that fold. Again, if the hamstrings are tight, bend the knees. All right, so we inhale, sweep the arms up, extended mountain. Exhale, swan dive, forward fold. Even if you have to bend the knees. Allow your head to be heavy. We're going to hang out here for just a few breaths. And then we're going to rise up, extended mountain. If you can't do that with the legs straight or somewhat bent, then I want you to look up, put a big bend in the knees. And with strong legs, come all the way up, extended mountain. Exhale, hands to heart center. So we're going to do that one more time. And there's more than one way to fold. I typically use two, but it's kind of whatever feels best, whatever you like to do. So I typically swan dive, forward fold, right? Taking the arms out and down. You can also come through heart center, right? And then fold. So again, it's just kind of personal preference, whatever your body's feeling that day. I've been known to use both. I typically take the arms out and swan dive, forward fold. But if you're in a jam-packed yoga studio, sometimes taking the arms out, you can't unless you're going to smack your neighbor. So you can always just take the hands through heart center. All right, let's do that slow one more time. Inhale, sweep the arms up, full breath in. Exhale, swan dive, forward fold. Allow your head to be heavy. And then inhale, come all the way back up, extended mountain. Exhale, hands to heart center. Nice. All right, we're going to move into warrior one. So we're just continuing to add on postures, and at the end, we're going to hook them all together and create this really nice vinyasa flow. So I'm going to turn this way for now. So we're going to keep the left foot forward and then step your right foot back. And as you look down, I want the heel of your front foot in line with the heel of your back foot. Right? So if it's not lining up like that, adjust your feet so that it is. So heel to heel alignment, hips stay squared forward, and then we sink into the front knee. And then arms reach up. So if there is an issue going on in the back knee, if it feels like it's kind of feeling a little wonky, is that a word, wonky? You can take the foot out. So you're not necessarily heel to heel alignment. That's the ultimate goal, heel to heel alignment. But again, there's two kind of thoughts on this. You can either have the hip opened up a little bit with heel to heel alignment and just work on bringing the right hip forward, or you can take the right foot out and keep the hips nice and squared. And then with the arms up. So it just kind of depends. If you like taking the foot out and you want the hips squared, great, do that. If you want heel to heel alignment and maybe that right hip isn't as squared forward right now, that's okay too. I like to have heel to heel alignment, and then I'm working on squaring the hips. So it's, again, just personal preference. All right, so sink deep into the front knee, arms reach up, palms face in, pinkies to the front of the room. Again, lengthening up through the spine. If you think about reaching your tailbone down towards the mat, again, we're not tucking the tailbone here. We're just lengthening through the low back. You're going to feel that a little bit more in the front of your right hip. Get your gaze set. In any yoga posture, there is a place to set your gaze. We call that your drishti. I want you to get so focused on whatever that is in front of you that you can't see anything around it, that you don't feel that left quad starting to burn, right? Because you're so laser focused on where it is you're wanting to go. And breathe. If your knee starts to go past your ankle, you know you can take the stance out a little bit. Whew, and then step the right foot up to meet the left. And we'll switch sides. All right, so now we're going to keep the right foot forward, step the left foot back. Again, sinking deep into the front knee, reaching the left hip forward. I'm going to turn this way. I feel like you can see a little better. All right, and then arms reach up. Oh, now I've got wrong foot. Here we go. All right, so this back leg is nice and straight. This thigh spins in. As it spins in, the left hip reaches forward. Knee stacks over the ankle, arms reach up. Again, lots of energy coming through the fingertips. I heard a teacher say, as if fire were shooting out of your fingers. I'm like, yes, right on. I like that. So as if fire were coming out of your fingertips, right? No dead hands, right? Lots of energy. Breathe. And then maybe straighten the right leg, step the left foot up. Nicely done. Hands to heart center. Gently close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths. All right, moving on. We're going to move into Warrior 2 from here. And we typically come into Warrior 2 from Warrior 1. Again, you don't have to, but that's typically in a vinyasa flow class. That's typically what it comes after. So we're going to move back into Warrior 1. Step your right foot back. Get settled in, right? Hips squared forward, heel to heel alignment. And we always start at the feet and then work our way up our bodies, making these tiny adjustments that your body needs to feel a little bit more at home in the posture, right? And if you are married or have children, you know that at home is not always super comfortable, right? So it doesn't mean we're trying to get comfy in the pose, right? It's not a yin class. Well, yin's not super comfy either. But anyway, getting sidetracked. Warrior 1, arms up. And then on the exhale, we're going to open out Warrior 2. So we're going to open this right hip out and then take the arms out parallel to the floor. So if you look down at your feet, you might have a heel to arch alignment. If not, adjust your feet so that you are there. And this right hip's kind of opened out, not completely to the side, but moving in that direction. Right leg's nice and straight, left knee bent, working on getting that 90-degree angle. And then you're pressing your knee towards the pinky toe side of your foot. So there's a tendency for the knee to want to fall in, especially if everything's all tight. Then work on pressing your knee towards the pinky toe side of your foot. Reach the arms out. Gaze down your left arm. Calm, steady breath. Get the gaze set down your left finger, your middle finger, the very tip of your fingernail. Calm, steady breath. And then straighten the left leg. Take a giant leap or maybe heel toe the foot in a little bit and then step back to the top of your mat. All right, moving into the other side. Keep your right foot forward, step the left foot back. All right, sinking deep into the front knee, left hip reaches forward, arms up, warrior one. And then on an exhale, right? So we inhale, lengthen. Exhale, open out, warrior two. So you see how I just kind of heel toe my foot out just a little bit so that when I come into warrior two, I've got that heel to arch alignment. So maybe watch it again. Here we are, warrior one. Then I heel toe out, warrior two. All right, heel to arch alignment, knee stacked over the ankle, pressing the knee towards the pinky toe side of your foot. And there's a tendency to want to reach forward here. So imagine someone's got your left hand pulling you back. So shoulders stack over your hips, right? Too far forward, too much in the future, too far back, too much in the past, right? We want to be nice and present. And then gaze down your right arm. And then straighten the right leg a little bit, heel toe the back foot in, and then step back up to the top of your mat. So we're gonna do that again, because I forgot one of the alignment cues, and it's a pretty important one. So we're gonna go over that. Plus, practice makes progress, so let's rock that out one more time. All right, keep your left foot forward, step the right foot back, warrior one. Exhale, open out, warrior two. And so if you're looking at the screen, look at my hips. So I'm gonna sink into this left hip like this. So this is also, see a lot of this, right? You wanna lift up out of the left hip, right? And as if keep your hip points pointed forward, right? So imagine that your pelvic were a bowl, right? So think of the pelvic bowl, and if you've got water in it, and if you're leaning too far forward, your water is gonna fall out. If you're sticking the booty out, the water is gonna fall out of the front, right? Let me turn this way, right? So too far forward, water falls out. If the booty's out, our water's falling out, right? So keep your water in your bowl. It's a nice little analogy. I like it. So again, keeping the hips nice and square. Even if you gotta look at a mirror, right? Go find you a mirror and come into this and work on getting your hip points in line, right? So gaze down the left arm, hold for 3, 2, 1. Step back up to the top of your mat, and we're gonna switch sides to even everything out, right? So left foot steps back, warrior one. Open out, warrior two. Again, shoulders stack over hips, pelvis in line, right? Nice and even. Not dipping here, we're not dipping in the low back. Tailbone lengthens down. Right, taking out any added curvature out of the low back. We're not tucking the tailbone again. Don't confuse that for tucking the tailbone. We are lengthening out through the low back. Hold for 3, 2, 1. Step back to the top of your mat. Awesome job. All right, guys, we're gonna move into a wide-legged forward fold, and then we're gonna move into some balance. So I want you to step out wide on your mat and look at your feet. Again, Make sure they're pointed forward, or maybe even a little pigeon-toed is okay, just not out any, okay? So feet forward, or maybe a little in, hands to hips. Inhale, lengthen, right? Creating space first. And then as you exhale, hinging at the hips, reach forward and fold. And then whenever you get to where you're going, you can take your hands to the mat. You could interlace your fingers behind you if that's an option. But I want you to take your attention to your feet. Right? And the majority of the weight is going to be in the balls of your feet, right? So about 80% in the balls of your feet, 20% in the heels. Not to be confused with chair pose, where 80% is in the heels, 20 in the front, right? So we want to shift the hips forward here as you start to drop your chest, because eventually, right, we want to work our upper body through the lower body in this life or the next, right? So the hips have to shift forward in order for us to begin to eventually start to reach through. If the hips are back, right, all in the heels, we're going to be like a dog chasing our tail, and we're never going to be able to get through. So I want you to shift the hips forward, even if you have to take your hands to blocks, right, forearms, wherever you got to do. And then think about spreading the sitting bones, right? Those two bones at the bottom of the hips, spreading those out, creating lots of length in the back of your legs. Take a few deep breaths. And then taking your hands down to the mat, we're going to halfway lift. So we're creating a nice flat back. And this time as we exhale, I want you to think about sucking the low belly in and up, right? To find a little bit more space to fold into. So inhale, lengthen through the spine, suck in through the low belly, and then fold again. I don't know where the belly goes when we suck it in like that, but it goes somewhere, and it does create just a little bit more space to fold into. And then to come out of this pose, I want you to look up halfway, put a bend in the knees, strong legs, hands to hips, and then with a strong core, we're going to come all the way back up to standing. Nicely done. All right, step back to the top of your mat, and we're going to make our way into, I did this as if we were going to come down on the mat. We're not. We're going to move into tree pose. So our first standing balance, I like to start with this in my beginner series and then add on because I feel like it's the most accessible pose. And I also end with it in every class because, again, it's the most accessible and it's kind of like a little pick-me-up. So we're going to ground down into the left foot. So spread the toes out wide, creating a strong foundation. And then you've got a few options. You can prop your foot up like a little kickstand, right? Keeping your toes down on the mat. You can bring your foot to your calf or to your inner thigh. And I want you to press with as much force with the standing leg as you are with the leg that's perched, so that they press into one another, acting like magnets. And then from that, we lift up out of the hips, create space in the spine, sternum up. And then you can take any arm variation here that takes you to your fullest expression, whatever that looks like to you today. In one of my classes, I'm like, your fullest expression, whatever that looks like. And this lady's like this. I'm like, oh yeah, fullest expression right there. Cock that hip out. So whatever your fullest expression looks like, it's all good. All right, get your gaze set, your dristi, right? Super important, especially in balancing poses. If your gaze is all over the place, so is your body, right? So get the gaze set. And then gently release, and we'll move into the other side. Okay, so a little note on the hips. This is a hip opener because we are opening out this one leg, right? So we're opening up the hip. And I want you to work on pressing the knee back, but not at the expense of your hips. So when you press the knee back, See how this left hip also moves back? I want you to keep the hips forward, right? Hip points forward. And then work on taking this knee back, but not at the expense of your hips. You can get into like some kind of weird SI joint stuff. And so we want to just make sure that we're in good alignment, make sure all the body is going to be working together properly. So you want to keep the hips squared. Again, mirrors are, I don't like practicing with mirrors, but if you're a beginner and you're learning, they're good to have, right? So make sure the hips are forward. Take the left foot up any amount. Just try not to press your heel into your knee, right? You can kind of cup it with the arch of your foot. And then taking your fullest expression, whatever helps balance you best, whatever makes you feel strong, powerful. Tune into your breath. And then gently release. Nicely done. So balancing postures can tend to bring up some judgments. I was leading a class once, and this guy he kept sliding his foot down. He's like trying to bring it up. And then he goes, oh, in the middle of class, right? I'm like, hey, this is yoga. We're supposed to be calm. But so it brings up judgments, right? And he was clearly aggravated and upset with himself. And if you watch the video prior to this one, you know that it's not about the posture. It does not matter what your pose looks like. It matters who you are when you get there. So if your head is full of judgment and it's harsh and that self-talk is just full of criticism, that's your yoga, right? It's not the posture. It's that inner talk, right? So make sure that in any pose, whether you have to modify with your toes down on the mat or not, make sure that self-talk is kind and compassionate, right? Because that's ultimately what yoga is about. We use these postures to kind of dive in a little deeper, right? So make sure that self-talk is nice, right? Want to be nice to yourself. All right, cool. So great job on that standing balance. And we're going to bring it down onto our mats. You're going to come onto your back. I'm going to grab the block because we're going to use that maybe in just a second. And we're going to come into our second back bend, bridge pose. And so with your knees stacked over your ankles, we're going to ground down into our feet and then start to lift the hips up. And then if you can, look at my shoulders. You're going to walk your shoulders underneath you. And maybe, just maybe, you can clasp your hands. If not, take the arms out by the sides, right? And I want you to think about not just lifting through the hips, but lifting through your chest as well. So as if you were pressing the floor away from you, lift up. And then keeping the quads engaged to protect your low back. Are you holding here for a few deep breaths? So tendency for the knees to want to splay out. Make sure you're grounding down into the inner side of your foot as well. Again, adductors are active, not clenched, not so active that they're pulling the knees together, but they're just allowing the knees to stack over the ankles and not splay out. And then untuck your shoulders, come down one vertebrae at a time. Windshield wiper your knees side to side. And then we're going to move into supported bridge. So how I said we use blocks to just make a pose a little bit more restorative. You can lift the hips, and you've got options, level 1, 2, or 3, fullest level on the block. I usually take it to level 2, and you want to take it to the meaty part of your booty, right? So not just the low back so the butt hangs off. I want it to fully support your low back. So right at the sacrum, I want you to place the block. You take your arms out to the sides. All right, so it's bridge pose without all the work, which is kind of nice. You guys have worked so hard today. I want to honor that. Right, even though we're bringing it down just a little bit, I want you to stay focused on the breath. Maybe with your eyes closed, just really taking in this moment. And then gently open your eyes. We're going to keep the block where it is. So if you were on the highest level of the block, I want you to bring it down to level 2 or 1. All right. So making sure the low back is fully supported. We're going to move into an inversion. So an inversion is just, well, there's two different, I've heard definitions. One is your heart above your head. One is your feet above your head. So technically your heart is it's still a little above your head right now. Unless you've got a big head, I guess. Crack myself up. All right, so baby inversion, moving along. We're just gonna take the feet straight up towards the ceiling. All right, so we're reversing the blood flow, getting that nice, good oxygen-rich blood back to our brain. Kind of gives your heart a little break so it's not pumping so hard or having to work so hard. And you just take your arms out to the sides. If you have an issue with, swollen ankles, this is a great pose to do to help relieve some of that. You can also do it up against a wall without the block, right, where it's called legs up the wall, and it's literally just like it sounds. Your butt is to the wall and your legs are straight up. So you look like you do now without the block, but with a wall. And then gently release your feet back down to the mat. Go ahead and remove your block. Come all the way down onto your back. Bring the bottoms of your feet together, knees out to the side. All right, so this is Supta Baddha Konasana, one of my favorite Sanskrit words to say. And we've done bound angle before. We just did it seated. So this is reclining bound angle, Supta Baddha Konasana. Again, you just take the arms out by your sides, palms up. There is a natural curve to your low back, so if there's space in between there, that's okay. However, you will feel more of a stretch if you tuck the tailbone, press the low back down, and allow the knees to fall out. And then taking your hands to the outside of your thighs, pulling the knees back up to center. Go ahead and hug them in towards your chest. Give them a nice big squeeze. Maybe rock from side to side, massaging your spine. And then taking your arms out to a T, stack your knees over the hips, or you can keep them hugged in. So we're gonna move into a twist, and the higher up your knees are when you twist, the higher up your spine, you're gonna feel that twist. So you get to determine, how far up you want to feel it. So you can stack the knees here and lower, or you can keep the knees hugged in and lower. But we're gonna take the knees to the right. I like to put my foot down and really come onto my right hip and then lower my knees. Let's take this out. And you want your knees to rest on the mat, shoulders to soften. And And your gaze goes down your left arm. So if this is not a deep enough stretch or a deep enough twist for you, you can always cross the top leg over and allow the knees to fall down. And if your knees don't rest on the mat, you can always prop them up with the block, or you can take the block in between your knees, and it'll just add a little, again, more restorative variation to the posture. All right, so taking a nice few deep breaths. Again, bringing that air all the way up into your chest. Feel a nice stretch in the upper back. Finding some ease as you exhale. One more full breath in. And exhale. And then bring your knees back up to center. Lower to the left. Taking your gaze down your right arm. If the shoulder wants to come up off the mat, that's okay. You can kind of, if you can't get your knees and your shoulder on the mat, you just kind of pick and choose what you want on the mat. If the shoulder's on the mat, the knees will be up. If the knees are on the mat, your shoulder might be up. It's all good either way, right? This is nice and restorative. So just find a place where you can find some ease. And then bringing your knees back to center. We're gonna make our way into final relaxation or Shavasana. So congratulations, you've made it to the end. And it's always, any yoga class is always ended with Shavasana. So you wanna come to a nice reclining position, one that you can hold for a few deep breaths. And I'm gonna get into the posture, but I'm gonna come out of it. So I want you to close your eyes and get fully into the posture, and then you'll just tune into my voice and I will start to cue you out of it, right? But you want to allow the feet to just come out to the sides. Like, you take up as much space as you need in this pose. So the feet just fall out naturally. If this is not okay on the low back, if lying completely flat is not okay, you can maybe take a pillow or something underneath your knees if you have that. If you don't, you can bend your knees, bring your feet flat to the mat, press the low back down, and then allow your knees to fall in. So they're just kind of supporting each other, and you're not really having to hold the knees there. So again, if lying completely flat is not okay, come here, right? If lying out straight is okay, allow the feet to fall out, arms reach out to your sides. Maybe walk the shoulders underneath you. Put on any extra layers of clothing, maybe drape a blanket over your legs. And before we get completely settled in, go ahead and close your eyes. Soften the features of your face. And then take a full breath in through the nose. Fill your lungs completely. Hold there at the top. And then open your mouth side out. Let's do that one more time. Full breath in, fill the lungs. Open your mouth side out. And then allow your natural breath to take back over. Softening not just your physical body, but your thoughts, your emotions. Begin to deepen your breath. You don't feel like you have to open your eyes. Just start to bring some movement back into your body. And you start with wiggling your fingers and your toes. And maybe rolling your wrist out, your ankles, taking the gaze towards the right and then the left. And then reaching your arms above your head, take a nice little good morning stretch. Full breath in, sigh it out. And then bringing your knees in towards your chest one at a time. Give them a nice big squeeze. And then with your eyes closed, gently roll to one side and press yourself up to a seated position on your mat. And sitting nice and tall on the spine. Just taking a few more deep breaths before you go throughout the rest of your day. And taking this moment to really honor your body for allowing you to do all you've done. Right, we can be so harsh and critical because our bodies don't look a certain way or they don't do certain things that we want them to do. But very rarely do we honor our bodies for just carrying us throughout our days, right? Much less what we've done here on our mats. And bringing your hands to your heart center. It was such an honor to guide you through your practice today. Namaste. And in Namaste, we just bow. And Namaste means the light, the teacher, the student in me recognizes the light, the teacher, the student in you. It's actually longer than that. But it's just recognizing and honoring that we're the same and we're one. So thank you so much for joining me. Great job. Day one, session one is over. And I look forward to seeing you at session two.